when you first start your career, if you did not come from money, earmark it in your head that you're going to use some of this money towards investing in future you, investing in your future finances, investing in your education, investing in something that's going to have a return, both in the short term and the long term.
What's up, my FY Fly folks out there? How y'all doing? I hope y'all doing all right. Welcome to the FY Fly podcast. My name is Hassan Thomas, aka the kid that did and the man that can, baby. And today, we're going to be chopping it up with the founder of Wealth for Women of Color, Miss Lissa Prudencio, aka Your Money Confidant. How you doing? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm blessed, super happy to have you here. I know we're going to get into some great content. Your energy was fire at FinCon, so you know we had to have you on FY Fly, right?
Yeah, likewise. Your energy on fire.
You know it. That's what we like to do at FY Fly. We like to skip the fluff and get right into the good stuff. So before we jump into, the money commandments, the cash commandments, as we were talking about, I want to know from you personally, were you always good with money, or was there a turning point in your life where you were like, okay, now it's time for me to get right?
Absolutely not always good with money. And I would say there were things I was good at that I learned from my parents: how to save, how to be frugal, how to build credit even. But there were definitely gaps. Like, they never taught me how to invest. I didn't know anything about real estate. So even when it came to money management, I was not great with it. I didn't come from money. So when I started having money, I didn't know how to manage it.
Yeah.
It was like what happens to celebrities, rap stars, when they get a lot of money, athletes, and they don't know what to do with it. So when I started making a lot of money, I was kind of fumbling it.
And I think that is a perfect segue to begin speaking about your 10 cash commandments. And I
Yes.
want to start from 1 to 10, breaking down the gems within each of those commandments. That sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I believe the first commandment is money matters. And you mentioned already, earn it, spend it, grow it. But people know, I feel like we know how to grow, we know how to earn money. More people are learning how to invest and grow their money. But one thing I feel that almost everybody has a problem with is spending money. So what are some ways that we can spend money with intentionality and not just be so frivolous with the money that we spend?
Great question. So spending with intention is something I talk about a lot on TikTok, on all my social media platforms. And it's really digging down to what your values are. I think these 10 cash commandments, they're for women of color, but they're really for anyone who comes from a marginalized community or a background that didn't come from money. And the reason this is very important for me to say that money matters is some people learn to be frugal their entire lives and don't spend. Other people, like me when I was younger, we get money for the first time and then we spend it all. So finding that balance comes with knowing what your values are. It's okay to spend money if it's going to bring value to your life and if it doesn't hinder the rest of your financial progress. So it's as simple as digging into, what do you value? People hardly stop to think about why they're buying something.
So let me get to some practical game. I want to ask you, I'm sure that you budget for your spending in your fund, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you specifically do that? Do you do it by percentages? Do you do it just by a certain number? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. If it's something that, so two ways: flexible buckets and sinking funds. So if you know something that you're going to do that's fun, like take a vacation next year, you can kind of go on a spreadsheet, estimate this trip is going to cost $1,000, $2,000. And then you can save up every month towards that in its own sinking fund. Flexible bucket is when you don't know what you're going to be spending on. Like, I just love the freedom to say, you know what, tonight I want to go out to eat because it's been a long week. I want to enjoy myself, have a nice meal. I just want to go out. So if I didn't set aside money for that somewhere else in my budget, then that comes out of my flexible bucket. So usually I'll have $500, $1,000 in a flexible bucket earmarked for fun so that I have the freedom to buy random little things if I go to a flea market. So
Okay, I
that's
like
kind of
that.
like two ways to build fun into your budget so that you're not taking from other areas when those opportunities for fun do come up.
So the next commandment that I want to talk about is the second one, which is you are actually worthy of wealth. And I think this is a big one because I want to know from the people that you've helped, from the clients that you've talked to and helped with money, what were some of the reasons that you were coming across that they didn't feel worthy of wealth?
Yeah, I think it depends on your background and where you come from in terms of whether you had money growing up or not, because a lot of clients I've seen have been fed messages. There's one way to do it. Go to school, get a good education, get a good job, save money, and then rinse and repeat. And that's one way to do it. That's the way a lot of our parents did it, I would say. But nowadays we have so many more options that people just aren't aware of. So I think some people don't feel it's possible. And I think that ties very closely to why some people don't think they're worthy of wealth. They don't believe they possess the skills to invest, to understand the stock market, to build a business, to build a second source of income. And when that happens, it blocks them from taking any steps towards those things. Because if you don't think you can build wealth or have a net worth of $1 million, you're not going to invest. You're going to continue to just, go to work, make more money, maybe buy a bigger
And
house,
what's
like
the
spend
solution
more.
for that in your opinion? Like how do people get over that fear?
I think there are a lot of things. Education is the core of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Being taught, and this is why I love your podcast, because now we have the internet. People can learn finance and they can learn it in a way that speaks to them. Because, right,
Mm-hmm.
me, wealth for women of color, some people might not like the way I describe certain things. They might love the way you describe it better, or they might like both of us. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
matter of finding voices that speak to you in a way that you understand, in a way that motivates you to want to learn more. So I think learning is a big part of it.
Agreed 100%. And going to I want for the next two, I want to group number three and number four. So number three was our world is built for us. Our world is not built for us to win. And number four is know the system to work the system.
Yep.
So elaborate a little bit on some of those systems that have systemically held back people of color and marginalized communities.
We could make a whole podcast about this.
About these two
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah. So again, like I said, so these 10 cash commandments are for people from marginalized backgrounds. And we have to acknowledge that there are systemic forces at play that prevent us from being able to succeed. And different for me than from you, right? I come from a Filipino background. Parents were immigrants, but I was born in the United States. So I'm a citizen and all that. I didn't
Yeah.
have the same struggles as them, but I still get looked at differently than other peers. I'm a woman, very different from a black man like yourself. We have
Hmm.
different experiences. Despite these systemic barriers, like what I want people to know is that you have some control in what you can do individually, but also don't be so hard on yourself when obstacles come your way, because these institutions that exist are there and they're not going to change overnight. It's good that we're aware of them so that we can give ourselves grace. But some of those, discrimination in the workplace, predatory lending, right? Even mass incarceration, discrimination in housing practices. There are a lot of things that affect people of color, even people part of the LGBTQ community. Other people
For
get
sure.
discriminated against. And if they can't operate in society like, let's say, a white man can, they're going to have a harder time building wealth overall.
Hmm.
So like I said, each one of those things we could do a whole podcast episode on, but it's knowing the system, because once you know it, you can navigate it a lot better. But If
Mm-hmm.
you don't understand how systems work like that and really try to navigate your own way, you might get stuck in a place that you shouldn't be stuck in.
So I'm thinking because I've heard this argument from honestly successful, really successful minorities, really successful, CEOs and things of that nature that are black or, Filipino or any Hispanic. I've heard some of these things is where the victim culture and so I want to get your opinion. Where is the balance of allowing the systemic forces to hold us back compared to fighting it and creating different ways around it? Like, where is that balance? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I have this discussion all the time. It's a tough balance. That there's no easy answer to that. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
room for both, right? Victim mentality, we're all screwed. We
Yes.
we can't we can't move up in society because
Uh.
society has made it that way. And because of that, I'm just not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to make what money I can, spend it and enjoy it while I can because I'm not going to live long anyway, right? There's so many different
The defeated
directions, the
mentality.
defeated mentality. So
Gotcha.
that's one extreme. The other extreme is basically saying that you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. The American dream exists. That's why we all, people like to immigrate to America, is because there's opportunity. And while there might be opportunity, that doesn't take into consideration some of the things I mentioned earlier, like discrimination in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace, predatory lending. Who does that affect more? If something affects people more, they can feel it. If it doesn't affect you, if you're privileged enough to not be affected by certain things, you're less privy to it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough balance. There's no easy answer, I think. I always approach it from a place of, let's acknowledge that there are systemic things that they are not on us to fix, right? If it's something that affects you, it's not on you to fix. There are tons of organizations, good people, people with money who have power to change those institutions, where we can vote, we can do small things in our communities to help change when we have the time and energy to do it. But what we can do
Mm-hmm.
are those individual proactive actions on our own finances. We make that money, and instead of spending it all, let's invest it, and let's invest it in
Yeah.
companies that we believe in, right? If every person of color in America invested all their money in only, like, 10 companies that we all wanted to succeed, it would change the economy, right? Like,
A
there's
hundred
there's
percent.
power with your money, but we're still at this place of trying to learn, because we don't learn it in school, to catch up,
Mm-hmm.
because different people from different ethnic backgrounds, women, different marginalized groups are just playing catch up right now. So it's kind of tough, but I think it's possible. But finding that balance is really hard. It's a mental thing.
I'm so glad you went there because that's where I was gonna take it with the money is power piece. I was gonna take it there because what I feel like what money gives you is that confidence. But you first won't have that confidence if you're not educating yourself about money and how to use it. So these next few commandments, 5, 6, and 7, they kind of deal around, educating yourself. And number 5 is silence is violence. Number 6 is question, examine, and unlearn, I believe.
Yeah,
And number 7 was there's no shame in our game. So that's where I was kind of getting that education and then application, applying what you've learned. That's where I was kind of get that. So talk about how important it is to first educate yourself because that can create those positive and those actions that will create change.
absolutely. I mean, you said it well. Silence is violence is basically the money taboo, right? If we're not talking about money and learning about it, we're gonna be stuck in a dark corner and never progress. Commandment 6 is learn and unlearn, and that's because I do believe, like, we have to learn a lot about money, but we also have to unlearn certain things we were taught incorrectly or socialized, in certain ways.
Yeah, that's big.
Like I gave the example earlier about overly being frugal. Like my parents taught me how to save, get a good deal. It was tough in my adulthood at first to spend on something that I really wanted and liked because I felt guilty about it. I still
You
did
heard your
it, but
parents in your head, in the
in your
back of your
head,
head,
right?
talking to you.
Yeah. So everyone's on their own journey of figuring out what are my rules when it comes to my money? Like what am I okay spending it on versus not without these outside factors? And then, having no shame in our game about money is really taking a lot of the shame from money mistakes. I think it's safe to say majority of people will have made one money mistake in their life. I don't want to make
Pretty
assumptions,
safe.
but if and that's okay. That's the whole point, is to acknowledge that, all right, I messed up. I made a bad purchase, made a bad decision. I let someone borrow money that I shouldn't have. I took the wrong job. I should have been at that job. Like there's so many different financial decisions that we have to make on a day-to-day basis. You're bound to make some wrong decisions. Give yourself grace, right? It's not the end of the world. Even
Yeah.
the biggest money decisions you can bounce back from. All of it comes back to that cycle of educating and taking action, educating and taking action. Because if you don't do one of those, you're going to stay in that cycle of making bad decisions and having a bad relationship with money and just in a aversion to money overall. So
Yeah.
it's breaking cycles.
And I want everybody to think about something. So even the best LeBron James, the Kobe Bryants, the Tiger Woods of the world, they go out and pay a coach to correct them and teach them, and they're already the best. So everybody listening, don't be afraid to go out and pay an expert, talk to an expert that can help you with your money. Because even the richest people got financial advisors and all these other financial people.
Absolutely.
And we have a couple more commandments here to round things off with 8 and 9. We have 8 is trading money for time, and 9 is making your money work for you. So what does that look like, today, just for the average, young person, the average millennial? What does that look like to make your money work for you?
So the whole goal is, when you first start your career, if you did not come from money, earmark it in your head that you're going to use some of this money towards investing in future you, investing in your future finances, investing in your education, investing in something that's going to have a return, both in the short term and the long term. So I was raised to only really understand earned income. It's one type of income. Earned income is when you work for somebody and you give them some value, some time, and some, your tasks, your job tasks. And in exchange, they give you money. That's earned income.
Yeah.
I never learned about passive income or portfolio income. And these are other ways of making money that sometimes even benefit you, like from a tax perspective. Like there are other ways to make money that require less time and less energy from you. They just usually take more setup at the beginning. But if you can focus some of your time and energy and your money on these things, you build it up so that in the future you have more sources of income.
So that's the biggest, in your opinion, that's the biggest reason why we should be investing now, is setting ourselves up with the option to have multiple streams of income from portfolio, from dividend investing, from different things of that nature, compounding interest as well. So that's pretty much the reason.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's, to me, it's not just investing your money. If you invest your time, your energy, your money, your resources in stuff that's going to bring a return later, your future you is not going to have to work. Your future you is going to, that's the whole point of achieving financial security and financial freedom, is where you can then be in control of your time and your energy and your money. So it's kind of backwards, because you're like, I have to do all this stuff now for later. It's not promised, but what's the alternative if you don't invest,
You be stuck in the same spot you are now.
Yeah, hoping that there's Social Security when you retire, and hoping that
Or that
you're,
you may hit the lottery or something like
yeah,
that. That
yeah,
1% chance.
yeah. That's another thing, right? Like, I grew up in a gambling household, in a household where we bought lottery tickets. So I
Hmm.
understand how these things fit in, in society, and why we do them. But if you can do things like that, you can also put money into an investment. It's not one or the other. There's no shame in how you want to spend your money, but make sure investing is a part of it.
Facts. Facts. So the last commandment, the 10th cash commandment, is starting where you're at. So in
Yes.
your opinion, for everybody who's listened to this and is feeling motivated, ready to get started, where in the world do they get started? How do we do that?
Absolutely. I love talking about breaking things down into small steps, right?
Hmm.
Because if you're like, I want to make $1 million, I want to do this, all these goals are great, but they're super lofty and seem out of reach. So I would say, if you want to start improving your personal finances, start small. Educate yourself. You can do that by following this podcast. You can do it by following other personal finance people on the internet. You can buy a personal finance book. There's different small things you can do to improve your education. You can also take small steps on taking actions on your finances. So again, some people think like, oh, I'll never build up my emergency fund. Like, how do I save 3 to 6 months of expenses when I hardly have enough for one? But
Hmm.
small steps will get you there. Put aside $10. Every month when you say no to going out to eat or saying no to a purchase, redirect that money into your savings and treat it like, okay, I didn't buy that thing, so that's freed up money. I'm going to go put it towards my emergency savings. So there's
Yeah.
small things you can do that will have a big impact. It's just a matter of, what are those habits that you can incorporate now?
Hmm.
Not next week, not next month, but like today, what can you do? You could spend 5 minutes today, listening to a personal finance podcast and learning one thing. It's building it into your routine.
For sure, for sure. Starting to educate yourself, and then once you have that education, actually applying it and putting it into application and making it work for you. And as you mentioned earlier, when we talked about kind of how to, plan for fun, how to budget for fun, first thing you said was understanding what you want to do for fun. What do
Yeah.
you want to do? So I think take that back and applying it to your overall goals, your overarching goals of your actual life. Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself driving? Where do you see yourself living? How do you see yourself dressing? All those different things. Put that into your little tunnel vision, and then lock in with those things. And if they don't align with what's in your tunnel, don't give it your time, your energy, or your money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have one more question for you. I can't have you on FY Fly and not ask you our famous
Yep.
final question. I'm gonna say two quotes, and I need you to let me know which one is more accurate in your opinion. All right?
Let's go.
All right. So the first quote is "More money, more problems." Shout out Biggie. And the second one is "Money can't buy happiness." Which one do you agree with most?
I agree with. I'm going to go with money can't buy happiness with the asterisk,
Mm.
because
Okay. Why is that?
happiness comes from within, right? But money is a tool that can be used to get the things you value, which those
Mm-hmm.
things you value can bring you happiness. So it's all related, but I'll say you can't go to a store and buy you happiness. You can't buy one item and change your life and just be happy. So
Mm-hmm.
that comes from within.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining the
Yes.
FY Fly podcast. If you have any final words, any final takeaways, go ahead and also let them know where to reach you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wealth for Women of Color, no spaces. And yeah, make sure you follow and subscribe. I would just say, start small. Subscribe to 2 people this week and watch one video, watch one or listen to one podcast a week, and you'll start to learn finance quicker than you
Mm.
think.
Big facts, big facts. That's something that we both, a lot of the things we've talked about here, we aligned with today. But one of the main things is starting small. I always like to say, doing those small incremental habits will lead to large results over time. So everybody, y'all already know we need y'all to stay safe, stay invested, and stay FY fly. We'll see y'all next week.